After a long weekend at my sister's wedding, I was happy to be heading home. The wedding had been beautiful, but the long hours of travel and celebration had left me exhausted. My son Jason, who was 7 years old, had been a well-behaved champ throughout the festivities, but he was equally eager to be back in the comfort of our home. As we embarked on the journey back, I couldn't help but reminisce about the wonderful moments we had shared during the wedding. Jason and I had danced together at the reception, and he had been thrilled to see his cousins and relatives. But now, it was just the two of us again, cruising down the highway under the starlit sky. The drive home was relatively smooth. Jason had dozed off in the back seat, curled up with his favorite blanket and stuffed animal. I smiled at the sight of his peaceful slumber, thankful for these moments of tranquility. It was late in the evening, and the only lights on the road were the occasional headlights of passing vehicles. As we approached a familiar intersection, I decided to take a detour, choosing a less crowded back road for the remainder of the journey. The route was longer, but it had always been our little tradition to enjoy the scenic beauty on these less traveled roads. The moon was hidden behind a blanket of clouds, casting an eerie darkness over the countryside. I turned on soft music to keep me awake and alert, but the hypnotic rhythm of the road soon made me feel drowsy. Despite my efforts to stay focused, my eyes grew heavy, and my mind began to wander. Suddenly, Jason's voice jolted me out of my daze. He pointed to something on the side of the road, and his eyes widened with concern. "Dad, look! Someone's there!" he said, his voice tinged with worry. I squinted through the windshield and saw a figure sitting on the edge of the road up ahead. My heart skipped a beat, and I slowed down instinctively. It was a young woman, and from the distance, I could make out that there was something unusual about her appearance. The area was dimly lit, making it difficult to see clearly. As we approached, Jason's unease became palpable, and he pleaded, "Dad, please don't stop. I don't like it. Let's just keep going." His anxiety tugged at my conscience, and I hesitated for a moment. However, my sense of responsibility compelled me to check on the woman. "She might need help, Jason," I explained gently. "We'll just see if everything is okay, and if it's not, we'll call for assistance." Reluctantly, Jason agreed, but he clutched his stuffed animal tightly as we slowly pulled up near the woman. The moment the headlights illuminated her face, a chill ran down my spine. Her face was streaked with what looked like blood, but it appeared as if the blood had been splattered across her skin, rather than originating from any wound she might have had. As I lowered my window to speak to her, I could sense Jason's discomfort escalating in the back seat. The woman, disoriented and distressed, began to approach our car rapidly. Her movements were erratic, and she started pounding on the window, shouting incomprehensibly. Fear gripped Jason, and he started crying, urging me to drive away. Without a second thought, I hit the gas pedal and pulled away from the unsettling scene. I tried my best to soothe Jason as we drove, assuring him that we were safe now, and that we had done the right thing by notifying the authorities. Once we reached a safe distance, I called the police and provided them with the details of what we had encountered. The dispatcher assured me that they would investigate the matter promptly. When we finally arrived home, Jason was still shaken by the encounter, but he was comforted by the familiarity and safety of our own house. I tucked him into bed, and he clung to me as I read him a bedtime story, seeking comfort in my presence. In the days that followed, the incident with the mysterious woman haunted both of us. The police conducted a thorough search in the area but couldn't find any trace of her. The whole experience left me with an unsettling feeling, but it also brought me closer to my son. We had faced something eerie together and come out stronger for it. As time passed, the memory of that night gradually faded, but Jason and I remained inseparable. We continued to cherish our traditions, creating new memories on our road trips, and I made sure to remind him that our bond was unbreakable, even in the face of the unknown. Don't miss out on the bone-chilling thrills. Subscribe now and prepare to be haunted by the horrors that await. Having spent the first 16 years of my life in the city, moving to the country was like a breath of fresh air, literally. The country roads were peaceful, and I enjoyed the tranquility of the nature around me. However, one night, an unexpected encounter turned my peaceful walk into an exciting and mysterious experience. It was a warm summer night, and I decided to visit a friend who lived in a nearby town. As I was walking home, I noticed an old car driving down the road behind me. At first, I thought nothing of it, But as the car got closer, I noticed its headlights were completely blinded by the rearview mirror. I tried to ignore it, assuming the driver would eventually pass me, but it didn't happen. As the old car continued to tailgate me, I became increasingly anxious. The narrow country road gave her no chance of passing safely. I decided to slow down, hoping the driver would get the message and pass me when he could. However, the driver's response was unexpected. Instead of overtaking, they started honking their horn loudly, which added to my anxiety. Fearing the worst, I tried to maintain my composure and considered pulling over to let them pass. But before I could make a decision, the old car gently hit the back of my car. I was blown away by the effect, and I immediately turned on my hazard lights to indicate I needed assistance or space to stop. However, the driver behind me was becoming more aggressive, bumping into my car repeatedly. The situation became dangerous, and my adrenaline kicked in. I knew I had to act quickly to avoid an accident. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what to do next. I noticed a narrow dirt road on the side that leads into the woods. In a gamble, I veered onto the dirt road, hoping to lose the old car in the thick foliage. I was driving carefully across the uneven terrain, trying to focus on the road while also keeping an eye on the old car's movements. Surprisingly, the car followed me into the dark forest. Panic consumed me, and I knew I could not continue this dangerous chase. Suddenly, an idea occurred to me. I knew the country well, having explored it extensively during my spare time. There was a hidden space a little ahead, obscured by tall trees and bushes. It was an ideal hiding place from any potential pursuers. Gathering my courage, I accelerated for a moment, and then suddenly veered into a hidden clearing. I turned off the headlights and the engine, hoping to make it look as if I had disappeared into the darkness. My heart beats loudly in my chest. Minutes passed like ages. I strained my ears, listening to any sounds from outside. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, I heard the rumble of a car. He continued on the main road, leaving me unnoticed in my hiding place. I let out a sigh of relief, but my heart was still racing with fear and adrenaline. I waited a few more minutes before cautiously starting my car again. With my headlights still off, I cautiously started my way back to the main road. Once I was sure the coast was clear, I turned on my headlights and made my way home, taking a different, longer path to be safe. The next morning, she reported the accident to 911, giving them a detailed description of the old car and driver. They assured me that they would look into the matter and increase patrols in the area. In the following days, I avoided driving alone at night, still shaky from the harrowing experience. To this day, I don't know the driver's intentions or why they pursued me so aggressively that night. Some of the mysteries are best left unsolved, and I've chosen to focus on the beautiful countryside and the quiet drives it usually offers. Despite the daunting encounter, I didn't let it stop me from enjoying the peace of my new country life. But I have taken care to remain alert during night excursions, knowing that sometimes the peace of the countryside can also hide its secrets and dangers. A Freshman's Midnight Encounter, a tale of concerts, Kim, and a frightening moment. During his freshman year in college, our protagonist had a passion for photography and loved capturing concerts on weekends. One particular night, after a show, he planned to meet up with a girl named Kim, a classmate. Waiting for her, he parked his car in a shady, dimly lit neighborhood. This happened when I was a freshman in college. I photographed concerts on the weekends, and they usually ended at around 11 or 12 at night. On this particular night, I was planning to meet up with a girl named Kim, who I had a class with. After finishing up at the concert, I went to a McDonald's to get a snack and a drink while I waited. Kim lived kind of far away, so it took her around 25 minutes to get there. We met at the parking lot, and she got into my car. I definitely didn't see a long-term relationship with this girl, but she was cool to talk to and hang out with. We sort of just drove around, and by this time it was about midnight. Also, we weren't in the nicest part of town. This was kind of the outskirts of our downtown. Being young and dumb, we parked in a shady neighborhood that was almost all dark. We started to kiss a bit, but then decided to get into the back seat. At the time, I drove a Ford mid-sized SUV with limited tint, and even though we were in the dark, we would be noticed in the car. After a couple of minutes of kissing and admittedly shedding some clothes, Kim screamed. I didn't know what it was about, but I found out soon enough. We both looked out the front windshield, and there stood a man. He was too dark to see any features, but he was definitely staring straight at us. and he had his one arm pointed towards us. It was hard to see much, but we both swore he was holding a gun and pointing it at us. I immediately jumped into the front seat with my pants partially off. I turned the car back on, and we took off fast. The man seemed so creepy. We assumed he was either homeless, or maybe on drugs, or maybe he was just looking to harm us. Even though we were both scared, we knew that the threat was out of reach once we drove a bit. We definitely should not have been in that neighborhood, and I was also so unaware of my surroundings at the time. I could only imagine how bad it could have been. Needless to say, we were both spooked, and we were thankful that we made it away. We ended up still hanging out for a bit, and then called it a night. It definitely made me think twice about doing something like that again, and being more cautious for my safety, especially at night.